Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Inside the Vault. I'm your host, Mark Yaxley. Today, we'll be speaking with Jeff Clark, who has been covering the precious metals and mining space as an analyst since 2006. Jeff is now the senior analyst for goldsilver.com, one of the largest retailers of precious metals in North America. He is an accomplished analyst, author, and speaker on the subject. Jeff, welcome to Inside the Vault. We're delighted to have you with us today, and we're looking forward to hearing your thoughts.
It's great to be with you, Mark. Yes, this will be a good discussion.
First of all, I'd like to hear your overall impressions of the current macroeconomic situation, and then more specifically, what it means for gold and silver in the near and midterm.
Sure. So I think a lot of listeners probably know, gold broke up through a point of resistance around 1400 and so that $1,400 level has recently become a floor. So regardless of what the price is at the moment, the reason that gold broke up through that was due to the trade war conflicts that have been going on. And we had a sharp increase in negative rates around the world too. Those were the two main catalysts that pushed it up. Mm-hmm. And since then, gold's been kind of soft. However, we have to put this all in context. None of the catalysts that are in place for gold have actually really surfaced yet. So think about this. You had those two catalysts that have pushed gold higher and to a certain extent silver. But we've had very little stock market volatility. We've had no stock market crash. We've had limited geopolitical risk. The U.S. housing market is still strong. The bond market is still strong. We've had no major crisis in the EU. We've had no recession. There's been no debt-related crisis. The Chinese economy is still doing okay. We have no inflation. We've had no issues with the U.S. dollar. So I could probably keep going, but the idea is that none of these things have really surfaced yet. And so in the big picture, when gold and silver are really going to move is when one of these issues, or more, quite frankly, surfaces and really sets into the economy, into our money, into the markets. When those things kind of explode, that's when we're really going to see I think gold and silver really move into the next phase. All of that is still ahead. And so while some people may be frustrated or even confused about why gold and silver haven't pushed higher, well, there's all your catalysts that could push it higher, as well as many others. There's plenty black swan issues out there that could surface as well. But when any one of those begin to deteriorate, then I think that's when gold and silver are really going to take off. And my biggest concern is on the monetary side. I think there's going to be some type of, monetary or financial or currency crisis, especially related to the dollar, U.S. bonds, U.S. interest rates. Something along those lines is probably my best bet as to what could be the catalyst that sets it all off. But it doesn't matter. There's so many risks out there right now that any one of those could really push us into the next phase of the bull market. And those are all ahead. So I think, when you listen to a list like that, you realize, hey, I have to make sure I'm prepared for this financially. And of course, I believe that gold and silver are the best way to do that.
Yeah, it's a really encouraging answer, actually, because although none of the catalysts that are really going to drive that price, let's say above 1,500 and beyond for gold, although they haven't occurred yet, like you said, there's a lot of potential for them to occur. All the warning signs still seem to be there, and the price itself, even without those catalysts, being enacted, it's still at a pretty solid level right now. I mean, if you look at gold's performance over the last year or so, you've got to be pretty happy with that anyway. So I'm encouraged personally. I like the direction we're heading in. I'd like to talk a little bit about silver for a second, Jeff. You write a lot about it. I think it's safe to say, knowing you personally, I guess I can say this, you're a little bit of a silver bug. We all know that gold is an essential part of any precious metals portfolio, but I'd like to hear your thoughts about the importance of owning some silver as well. What are the reasons to own some silver, and what is the potential upside for gold's little brother?
Yes. So I think, as a lot of people listening to this probably know, silver is more volatile than gold, and that's because it's a much smaller market. So just to give you an idea of just how small that market is, if you added up all the above ground investment grade silver that exists in the world, so not jewelry or other forms of silver, but just investment forms in coin or bar form. If you added all that up, and let's say institutions came along and wanted to invest in silver, if institutional investors around the world put 2%, just 2% of their cash, of their assets into the silver market, into this investment grade silver that's available, it would equal over 4,000% more than all of the silver that exists in above ground form in investment form. Mm-hmm. So that gives you an idea. I'm not saying institutional investors are going to do that. I'm just pointing out just how small this market is, and it just won't take a whole lot of cash coming into it to move the price a lot higher. And of course, all that silver wouldn't be available anyway. Most people in a bull market buy, they don't sell. Mm-hmm. So that just gives you an idea of just how small it is, and therefore how volatile it could be. So if we can catch that volatility on the upside, and that's what I think, of course, is ahead, we could really make a lot of money. Historically, silver has always outpaced gold in the second half of bull markets. Mm-hmm. In the first half of bull markets, gold usually outperforms. Gold starts the process, and then silver usually plays catch up and then passes gold. And in all the 5 gold bull markets in modern history, that's exactly what's happened. Gold started, silver caught up and passed it on a percentage basis. So mm-hmm. I expect that to happen again. And that's why it's not surprising that right now, silver's kind of trailing gold. It's not rising as much as gold. That's actually historically normal. Mm-hmm. So before this is all over, though, we do think, at least on a historical basis, silver will catch up to gold and pass it on a percentage basis. So the main reason to invest in it is you could potentially make even more money on it than you would on gold. You have to be more nimble. You will have to sell when things get a little crazy so you can capture that profit. But I think that kind of volatility is exactly what's ahead.
Excellent. Yeah, I remember that very clearly. The last financial crisis, seeing that silver price run up all the way into the high 40s, and it was really such a dramatic run. And like you said, it happened in the second half, not initially, but in the second half of that bull run. Jeff, you've had the opportunity to work closely with one of the biggest names in our industry for a number of years now, Mr. Mike Maloney. He is the star of some excellent educational videos. I think that's one of the things that Mike might be best known for, that he's produced over the last few years about how money really works and the importance of owning precious metals. I wanted to ask you today, what has that experience been like, and what have you learned from working with Mike Maloney over the years?
That's a great question. I have been able to work hand in hand with him since coming to Gold Silver. I think if people don't know him, he has a knack for seeing things that most other people don't see. For example, he and I are actually working on a book right now, and it should be out the first half of next year. So we're excited about that. But we've been working hand in hand on that book. And it's funny. I've been told I'm a good writer, and I've been writing for quite a while now. But when it came to writing this book with Mike, I learned so much from him in terms of how to look at something from the big picture and how to really dig deeper into the data and into history. That old saying, the further back you look in history, the further ahead you can see. And that's really true with Mike. And I can tell you firsthand, he is not satisfied with the status quo or the status quo of research is what I mean. Looking at something and just digging up a chart or some data or something like that. That's just sort of a beginning of the process with Mike. So I think people will recognize that when this book comes out, and they'll see just how in-depth it is. And it won't be a real big book, a real long book, But it's going to have some perspective in it that you probably won't see elsewhere. And of course, this is how Mike Maloney got his start. He was unsatisfied with how the financial planner that they had hired for his mother basically failed her, and she lost a lot of money. So he started researching it on his own. And it's that in-depth research and not being satisfied with a simple answer that led him to creating the Hidden Secrets of Money video series, and of course, goldsilver.com. So it's been quite the experience. I've learned a lot, despite all the things that I've already learned in terms of how to write and research and that sort of thing. So I'm excited about this book that will be coming out next year, but it's been a wonderful experience. It really has.
That's amazing that it's actually all of his own in-depth research that led Mike to the gold industry. I didn't know that about him, and I find that quite interesting. Do you have a title yet for the book, Jeff, or is that still to come?
The Great Gold and Silver Rush of the 21st Century.
Oh, that sounds like a bestseller to me. I'm sure.
And I really believe that, what's ahead for gold and silver is going to be quite fantastic and quite breathtaking, quite frankly. So it's going to be very exciting. We do practice what we preach, and we do believe that what's ahead is going to be something quite fantastic.
Well, we all look forward to reading that book, and please keep us posted. We'll certainly make an announcement to our clients and listeners once it's out. Jeff, I want to ask you somewhat of a personal question, and I hope you can answer this for us, because a lot of our listeners, like you, are Americans. A lot of SWP's clients are Americans. I wanted to know your thoughts on the need or perceived need to internationalize a portion of your assets. For example, are you, Jeff, worried about things like government confiscation or other threats that might have you leaning towards diversifying internationally? And be candid. I mean, I'm asking you this question because I think it's on the minds of a lot of Americans, Canadians as well. And I'd really like to hear how you feel about
it. I've been preaching almost, if you will, the idea of diversifying internationally and the importance of that for a number of years now. And it's not because of anything other than I feel the need to do it personally. So yes, I am diversified internationally. I do use, as you know, SWP's services. That's why I'm on the board with SWP there. I really believe it's one of the best ways to accomplish that. And gold is, of course, one of the easiest ways to diversify internationally. So I think government confiscation is one thing. And the way I look at all of this is the worse the crisis you think will get, the more you need to diversify internationally. So while I don't know if the government's going to confiscate gold, for example, I think it's more about government interference, social upheaval. The bottom line for me is I think everyone should have some sort of financial go bag, if you will, something that's in place in case the worst happens. And in many cases, for most ways that we diversify internationally, it really doesn't, if nothing bad happens, you don't lose anything, you still have your gold, for example. So I think it's only wise, given the number of elevated risks in our society today around the world, both with markets, with economies, with currencies. I just think with all these risks that are elevated, it's only prudent, it's only wise to have some sort of backup plan in case you or your family need it. I look at it this way, if something bad does happen, my wife or my kids are going to look at me and say, "You've been studying this, you've been writing about this, why didn't you do something about it? Why weren't you ready for us?" So I still live in America, but I have some things in place so that if worse comes to worse, I have the ability to move relatively quickly to escape whatever the turmoil might be, whether that be escape financially or escape physically and actually go to another country. So whatever that solution is for everyone, I do think the risks are such that it's only wise to have something in place for yourself in case you need it. And if you don't, you haven't lost anything.
Yeah, exactly. No risk there. So is it safe to say, Jeff, maybe just, to kind of summarize that thought, the advice that we give our clients and that people in our industry give clients on a regular basis is a portion of your wealth, and you can decide what that percentage might look like, should be in precious metals, and a portion of that money or those precious metals should be offshore. Is that a kind of a safe summary? So it's a percentage of a percentage at the end of the day. We're not saying, pick up everything you have and move it into an offshore gold vault. That probably isn't the answer.
Right. I don't think everyone should have everything overseas, and you're going to have some guests online that might disagree with that. It depends on what you think is coming, but to whatever makes you feel comfortable. If the worst does happen in the United States or Canada or wherever you live, do you have sufficient bullion set aside somewhere offshore that will serve you in that time of need, that will actually be enough for you to make a difference in whatever plays out? So yes, it's not necessarily a percentage of a percentage. For me, it's just, okay, here's how much I have I want overseas, regardless of what percentage that is. Here's how much I want overseas so that I'm ready for a worst case scenario, or even something that, maybe not worst case scenario, but just something that gets real bad. And hey, you know what? I think I better get out of here for a year.
Well, you're always when to come down to the Cayman Islands for a year or so, Jeff. You know that. You've got friends and family there now.
Yeah. I think everyone should have some kind of plan like that, though, in place, just in case.
Absolutely. No, very good answer. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you sharing your thoughts. I wanted to close the interview with another personal question. Maybe it's because I know you and I feel like I can ask you these things, but I read in your bio that your father was an award-winning gold panner and that your family owned mining claims in California, Arizona, and Nevada. Is it safe to say that's really where your love for precious metals started? Like when you were a young kid, or did your dad actually take you out, to pan gold and kind of have you as his sidekick on these expeditions?
Yeah. My dad has a love for it, and yes, he did win awards for actually gold panning. He wasn't, the best in the world or anything like that, but he did win some awards. And yes, there actually are contests where you can participate in gold panning, and whoever finds the gold and the sludge the quickest, type of thing. So he really got into it, and he had some success. He didn't get, super wealthy from it or anything like that. But I think the biggest nugget he found was a giant piece of quartz, and it had a total of, I think it was 3.5 ounces of gold intertwined with this piece of quartz. It was a beautiful, beautiful piece, and it was probably, a foot and a half tall, so it was really quite a find. But that was sort of that's unusual. That's not something you find all the time, of course, but he loved it. And yes, we did as a family have claims in California, Arizona, and Nevada, and we did a lot of gold prospecting. He did it more than I did. It's a lot of hard work and you're going to get, sweaty and dirty, and it's kind of like fishing. You go out to fish and you may have a good day and you may catch nothing, and that's the same way with gold panning. You can go out and find something, or you can go out and find absolutely nothing, but it was really fun. He has since retired. He's up in years now, but retired from doing all that. But it really was fun. I think my love for gold actually came when I inherited a gold eagle from my grandfather, who passed away and left it for me. And I had no idea that he even had it. And what it was a gold eagle from the very first year that the U.S. Mint started making them, which was back in 1986. So I have one of the very first gold eagles ever made by the U.S. Mint when they started manufacturing them again.
I
So
was about to ask if you had managed to hold on to it all these years, or if you had made the same mistake some young people make when their grandparents leave the metal. They tend to sell it, to pay their rent or
right.
get a better
No, that
car.
that was special to me. It has sentimental value as well as gold value. So I've held on to it, and I don't know what I'll do with it. I might pass it on to my family. I don't know. I mean, I will be selling most of my gold and silver when if they go into some sort of bubble or mania or something like that. I will sell most of my holdings to capitalize on the profit and take advantage of a wealth transfer. But there will be some pieces like this one that I'll probably just hold on to forever. So yeah, it was really fun. That's what really kickstarted my interest in gold. And if anyone listening has never actually held a gold coin in their hand, it's quite something. It really makes you stop and think, and you feeling that heft in your hand, like, wow, this is something real. This is not just a rock. This is actually money. So that's what started it for me.
Well, Jeff, I'd like to thank you for taking the time and joining us today. It's been fun getting to know a little bit more about you, hearing your thoughts on the market, and again, very encouraging that you think there's a lot more upside for gold and silver in the near and midterm. Please keep us posted on your book. I'm going to go ahead and post your contact details along with the interview, so anyone who is listening right now can reach out to you, get in touch with you over at goldsilver.com. I'd like to thank you again, Jeff, and I'll speak to you soon.
Very good. Thanks, Mark.